I come from a huge family, actually. 3 boys, 3 girls, so there's 6 siblings total. And I love them all to death. We're like the Brady Bunch, that's what we call each other, because, the 3 boys, 3 girls. And I always grew up around them, like people would call me and be like, "Are you at a party?" I'm like, "No, I'm just at home. There's a lot of us here," so that's kind of how I grew up and was always used to being around my loving family. Once my parents were divorced, this now meant that we were gonna go, from house to house. So from my dad's house to my mom's house and kind of, split it up. Me and my sister were very close because I was with her every single day, going from house to house, and that's what made us so close.
Her and I were really close in age. We're six months apart. So we always did everything together. We were both dancers, always putting on shows at our grandma's house. We were inseparable. I told Kaylee everything. Things I didn't even tell maybe my big sister, or, I confided in her all the time about boys, everything.
She was so funny. Obviously we had our fights all the time. We always fought, actually the day before. We were mean to each other, sometimes, we always would mess with each other. So that's just what it was like, we were always bickering, but then we'd always make up, and we were really beginning to understand how alike we were. Actually, the year before she passed away, we were looking forward to finally being back in school together because she was finally gonna be a freshman in high school and I was gonna be a senior. So even though it was gonna be 1 year, it was gonna be great because, my friends that knew her, when we went to elementary school together, I would walk her to her class. I was I was the big sister. And obviously it became less of that, but, more like friends. Because you start to realize how much you are alike when you're starting to find each other, you're getting to that age. She was a cheerleader. She was the dancer, the cheerleader. I danced with her too when I was little, and then I began cheering as well. I was on the cheerleading team at my high school, and she had just made the team. She was just she gave such great advice too for someone so young. She just always gave great advice for some reason, and she was very funny. She was such a goofball. My whole family, we're just a bunch of goofballs. She really was though, and but she could get serious when it was time for advice, and she would be brutally honest as well, which sometimes you need,
When we were in different schools in middle school, we would text each other during periods, and I actually was bullied in middle school. And I remember texting Kaylee and telling her about it, and she always used to tell me she wishes we were in the same school so she could defend me and stand up for me. So
my dad would wake me up at 4:30 a.m. I would get ready in my bathroom, close the door, try not to wake her up because we shared a room at my dad's house. And by the time I did my makeup and hair, I would have to go wake her up. So like a routine, she got in the back seat, reclined the chair, fell asleep. I get into the front seat. Some mornings I would fall asleep because it's very early. I did fall asleep that morning. And, we went to my mom's house, like the regular routine. But as we passed the busway, I was woken up by one of the scariest noises I've ever heard in my life. It was so loud that people on the scene said it sounded like a bomb, and that's what they thought it was. And I realized that what sounded like a bomb wasn't a bomb. It was the sound of a car hitting us and literally driving through us. My dad quickly asked, "Is everybody okay?" And he was kind of in a panic, and my feet were up on the dashboard when I was sleeping, so the airbag deployed on my foot, and I was in pain because of that. However, because of the adrenaline, it wasn't that bad yet, so I just kind of said something about my foot really quickly, and that's when a sound, it was even scarier than the sound that woke me up. It was no sound. from the back seat. It was no reply. And I turned around and I saw my sister, and she was unconscious. And it was like I became helpless. I literally do not know how to explain the feeling except for feeling helpless. Like I felt like a child again, like I couldn't do anything, and I physically became like a child. All I could say was, my sister, my sister, my sister, over and over. That's the only words that would come out of my mouth. And my dad realized the state she was in, so he opened his door to get out the car. The sliding door was gone, and he literally just stepped into the car, but he was still standing on the street, and tried to get my sister out of the car because the light that was hanging from above was kind of sparking and the gas tank was all over the floor. So normally you leave someone in that situation, you leave them there because you don't want to further, you could paralyze them or something like that. But it was a scary situation and we had to get her out of there. So he tried to get her out, and even though the impact was on the left side and I was in the passenger seat, the impact was so hard that the car kind of went like this. So my door was jammed shut and I couldn't get out, but my window was also broken. So a kind homeless man on the side of the road actually pulled me out of my window, and we just laid on the gas station, the grass right next to the gas station, and we waited for help and we prayed for a miracle. My dad's phone was gone, and I had my phone, and I had to call my mom, who was a minute away. We were so close to making it home. And I feel so bad because I can't even imagine having to wake up to that. It was 5 a.m. by that time. And she came to the scene so quick in her pajamas. And I had to also call my stepmom. And she arrived very quickly as well. And then 2 ambulances came. And before any of them got there, there was this lady who kind of just showed up, and I remember hearing her say, she has a weak pulse. I can hear those words in my head. She has a weak pulse. And that's when the ambulances got there, and they were working on her and some of them were working on me, so I couldn't really see what was going on, but I found out they had to do the tragus thing to her, which is very, they only do that in very serious situations because it's kind of risky. And they took me to Baptist Hospital, and I had never been in a hospital before. I'd never had surgery. I'd never been in any kind of situation like this. I was 16, and I was in this room, and the TV didn't work. I found out later, obviously, it was just unplugged because it was all over the news. I could just tell, I didn't think about it, but I could just tell there were like secrets going around and like people were whispering, but I also figured that had to do with the difficulty in me being discharged. I remember just laying there after it all, just wondering like what was going on, because people were just whispering, and I could see like my grandma talking to the nurse, and my brother was there. He was gonna leave and go see my sister, which he felt bad about. I don't know why. I knew she was in worse condition than me, so I told him go, but he ended up staying, and I didn't think anything of it. So my grandmother came into the room and she said, "Mommy wants us to go see Kaylee because she's very sick." I'm just thinking Kaylee's in bad condition. So I said to my grandmother, "Is she going to make it?" And she said, "I don't know." So we headed over to Ryder Trauma Center where my sister was airlifted that day. And so I was in a wheelchair, and she was rolling me into this hospital where I felt like I was in the scene of a movie, because it was like this long hallway of just family members that I have not seen in ages, and friends I haven't seen in ages. And no one spoke. No one said a word. Everyone was just staring at me, and I don't even know how to explain how I felt. And then we turned into this other smaller room where my intermediate family was. And again, no one was speaking, and I felt super uneasy. And I don't I imagine like how they talked about how this was gonna go down and who was gonna have to say it. And my mom ended up turning to me and she whispered in my ear, she didn't make it. And on my way over to Ryder Trauma Center, I remember telling myself, if she's gonna die, at least I'm gonna get to say goodbye to her. I get to tell her it's gonna be okay because of what we believe in and not to be scared and that I'll miss her. And when I got there, I found out she was already dead for 3 hours. I screamed. That's all I could do. I let out a scream that my cousin Zoe says that she cannot forget to this day.
I remember just hearing her scream after they told her the news. You know, I could just hear the scream from down the hall, and I just broke down crying.
And then I just went blank, and I remember just sitting in that wheelchair with my mouth open. And my mom said, you can go see her. I needed to first take it all in, and then I figured, yes, I need to go see her. So we went to go see her, and I remember whoever it was that was wheeling me, I made them stop right before we went in because it kind of hit me that I'm 16 years old, I'm about to see somebody who's dead, and it's my sister. So we went in, and it was like this out-of-body experience. I remember, I feel like I was looking down at myself sitting in that wheelchair with my mouth open, and she was just laying there, and she was cold. And she kind of looked a little discolored already. And I was in such shock that I couldn't speak and my mouth was just open there. And I think my mother realized that, so she said, kiss her. She knew I would have wanted to do that. Kiss her goodbye. Which is something that you see in movies, you know, you see in those corny movies where, you know, these lovers have to be split up and they're kissing goodbye, but this is me kissing goodbye my 13-year-old sister because somebody chose to drive drunk. And I said, where are they taking her? And she said, to the morgue. And then we had to leave the room. And I felt like I was like leaving her. My mom actually got to fly in the helicopter with her when she was airlifted, which is almost unheard of. And there was one detail that my mom told me that I could never get out of my head, and it made me feel so sick to my stomach, and I hate thinking about it. And she said when she was in the helicopter, she was sitting by her feet, so she could see her feet. And her little pinky toe was just hanging off. But I'm so thankful because she never woke up. She was immediately unconscious. She was sleeping. And she was just knocked unconscious. So I like to think that as soon as she got into the car and she fell asleep, she immediately went to where I believe she is. Then we went home, and I was in such shock that I didn't know what I was thinking. I was just thinking of what was gonna happen now. We had to tell the little ones. So we took them into my grandma's room. and my stepbrother too. And I don't remember how it was said, but I remember my stepbrother started crying. And he's a boy, so he never shows his emotions. And I haven't seen him cry about it since that day, but that's just how hurt he was. And I never seen him cry about something like that. And I'll never forget I don't even know what made her think of it, but my stepmom, we were just all kind of sitting in the living room, and she said 6. And she started to cry, and she looked at my dad, and she said our number was 6. Because there were 6 of us, and now there was only 5. And I truly don't remember the rest of that day. What really changed, what was really hard, was I can still see her laying down in her bed before I woke her up, because I remember I got ready really fast that morning. And I remember leaning up against the door frame of my bathroom and looking at her and being like, God, I got ready really fast this morning. Like, this is weird. But I woke her up. And that was something that was really hard for me to get over in the beginning, because I kept thinking, what if I didn't get ready so fast? Or what if I got ready a little bit faster? And my dad was the same way. He said, what if I jiggled the keys to get into the car? What has been really hard was at first was going back to my dad's house and seeing that bed and seeing it empty. But what was the most hard, because at least when I was at my dad's house, I still had the little ones. When I was at my mom's house, now it was just me. And I'll never forget, we used to switch off on certain chores to make it fair. And I set the table, and I accidentally put up 4 placemats. But it was just 3 of us. And no one said anything, but we kind of just all looked at each other and knew. And everything had just changed in an instant.
To think sometimes that, we would have been in the same grade, doing, she would have been in college, I would have been in college our freshman years. So to think that I could have called her about all the things I go through now and gotten the best advice from her, like the fact that I can't do that, it still breaks my heart all the time, Like, no one understands until you go through it. Like, it doesn't get any better. It's been almost 6 years, and look at me right now. That person's still gone. It's almost more sad that they've been gone for that long. There's no excuse today to make that decision to drive drunk. We have all these apps on our phone where you can get a driver within minutes that are very cheap, especially compared to how pricey it is if you were to be caught driving drunk, or if you were to kill someone, or if you were to kill yourself. Make it a part of your plan. The same way you're at work and you're sitting at your desk saying, those shoes would look cute with that top, I'm gonna wear that tonight. Don't stop there. Say, how am I gonna get there tonight, and how am I gonna get home? And what's so scary is you can be the best driver in the world, but you have to worry about the people around you. And that's what's so sad, because other people are still making these horrible decisions to get behind the wheel while under the influence. And it's just not worth it. It's not worth it to get behind the wheel while you're under the influence. I promise you that.